But we do start with that emotional testimony from 4 of the country's top gymnasts taking the FBI to task in a Senate hearing for its failures in the Larry Nassar investigation. Aly Raisman was one of them. We will speak to her live in just a moment. But first, NBC's Ann Thompson is in Washington with a look at what Aly, Simone Biles, and others had to say. Hey, Ann, good morning.
Good morning, Hoda. It was an extraordinary hearing. The gymnasts say they were very gratified by the words of support and compassion from the senators as the women described their sexual abuse by the team's doctor in sometimes excruciating detail. But the horror doesn't end there. The women made it very clear they spoke up, detailing their abuse to the FBI, and the agents did nothing. And by doing nothing, the FBI allowed more children to be abused.
We have been failed, and we deserve answers.
In gut-wrenching testimony on Wednesday, the 4 elite gymnasts begged the Senate Judiciary Committee to hold the FBI and top gymnastics officials accountable for the sexual abuse they suffered at the hands of USA Gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar. The sport's biggest star, Olympian Simone Biles, fighting back tears.
I don't want another young gymnast, Olympic athlete, or any individual to experience the horror that I and hundreds of others have endured before, during, and continuing to this day in the wake of the Larry Nassar abuse.
Nassar is now serving up to 175 years in prison, pleading guilty to abusing 10 of the more than 265 accusers who came forward. Fellow gymnast Michaela Maroney recalled how Nassar repeatedly sexually assaulted her, telling lawmakers that in 2015 she spent 3 hours on the phone with an FBI agent, sharing graphic details of the abuse that she had not yet shared with her own mother.
I began crying at the memory over the phone, and there was just dead silence. I was so shocked at the agent's silence and disregard for my trauma. After that minute of silence, he asked, "Is that all?"
Aly Raisman echoed that, saying the FBI's response to her allegations had a devastating impact.
The FBI made me feel like my abuse didn't count and it wasn't a big deal.
The FBI didn't officially open an investigation until nearly a year after it first learned of the allegations. In that time, it's estimated Nassar abused at least another 70 gymnasts.
I'm deeply and profoundly sorry.
FBI Director Chris Wray, who did not lead the Bureau at the time, is acknowledging its mishandling of the case, telling the committee that of the 2 agents who lied about their actions, one has retired and the other has been fired, adding reforms are already underway. Maggie Nichols was the first athlete to report Nassar's abuse to USA Gymnastics in 2015. Her mother, Gina Nichols, told Savannah in a 2018 Dateline how frustrated she was by the FBI's limited follow-up.
I reported this over a year ago, and you're the first person from any form of law enforcement that has called me. And I said, "So when did you get this assignment?" He told me yesterday.
Maggie Nichols wants answers and action.
Maggie, what is justice?
I think justice is holding those accountable who failed us throughout our gymnastics career and throughout our childhood.
While the director of the FBI showed up at yesterday's hearing, the Justice Department officials who have so far refused to charge those 2 former agents for lying about what they did declined to attend, leaving the gymnasts with the impression that the Justice Department doesn't care. Hoda and Savannah.
Ann, thank you. And joining us now on the heels of that appearance on Capitol Hill is Aly Raisman. Aly, the trauma was apparent, the bravery was apparent. Ann just pointed out that maybe you guys did not feel heard after all. It's been a few hours since your testimony. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to describe how I'm feeling. There's so many different emotions. First, I'm anxious, I'm triggered, I'm drained. It's heartbreaking even just to listen back to my teammates and my very close friends, their testimonies. I'm so proud of them, and it's hard. It's hard to do that. It's hard to go up there and share so much. And I will say, though, I felt a little bit more hopeful with how supportive the senators were, and I'm really hoping that they're going to be able to help us. But very disappointing that nobody from the Department of Justice came. It just, to me, sends a message that they didn't think that it was worth their time, which is really concerning.
Aly, the FBI director confirmed that the 2 agents most directly involved have either been fired or retired. That's some accountability, but I know you think it has to go much deeper and much farther. What would you like to see happen here?
Yeah, you know, the retirements and people getting fired without explanation, it's the way I look at it is it leaves room for us to speculate or guesswork. And when we're talking about children being safe and sparing them from the abuse that I and so many others went through, in order for us to be confident this won't happen again, we need a full and complete independent investigation, and we need to look at how the FBI, USOPC, and USA Gymnastics, the interplay among all 3 organizations, all 3 need to be investigated independently, and we need to be looking at the connection of how all 3 work together. And, you know, as I said, that the senators seem to be very validating and very supportive of us, which we are very grateful for. And my question to them is if they can help us and if they can get those investigations rolling for us, because we've been asking for it for years. And until we have that, like, why did this person get to retire? What did they do that the FBI felt was not okay that they had to let them go? And why did they get to slip out the back door, just like so many others have?
It was sickening, quite frankly, to understand that you guys had talked to the FBI agents. And you said that an FBI person you spoke to tried to convince you that your trauma, which is so incredibly apparent, wasn't that bad. What did that agent do to make you feel that way?
Yeah, well, from the very beginning when I was reporting my abuse to Steve Penny, from the very beginning, Steve Penny kept telling my mom and I that the most important thing was to keep things confidential. The most important thing was, you know, to give Michaela Maroney breathing room. He was trying to make sure we weren't talking about it. It seemed that his biggest concern all along was that this wasn't going to get out. It was never, how are you feeling? What can we do to help you? I remember one time I asked Steve Penny, just making sure that Nassar wasn't going to be at a competition, and Steve Penny said something back like, can you just sign your tour agreement already? Like, it was just, there was never any concern for how we were doing. And it's the same feeling with the FBI. I followed up so many times. My mom would follow up because I was in, you know, it was so triggering for me. I was so afraid. And so my mom has been such a warrior and such a big support system for me and kept following up. We kept asking if the FBI would interview me and always told, I'm working on it. I'll get it to you. Don't worry about it. We're handling it. And unfortunately, we thought USA Gymnastics was going to be doing the right thing. And so there was a lot of pressure from the FBI agent to be interviewed at the United States Olympic Committee. I said so many times I was not comfortable with that. I was under the care of USA Gymnastics and the United States Olympic Committee, so I personally didn't feel comfortable being interviewed there. Steve Penny flew in the morning of my interview, and I just remember I didn't feel supported in that when I was going into graphic detail about my abuse, which is clearly I don't know the proper definition, sexual abuse or sexual assault. It was clearly that, and it happened more times than I can even count. The agent just kept diminishing my abuse and telling me that, you know, he didn't really feel like it was that big of a deal and maybe I should drop the case. And when it was convenient for the FBI agent, he flew into Boston, even though I requested to have my original interview there with my mom there. When it was convenient for him and he wanted to convince me to take Nassar's plea deal or pressure me to take Nassar's plea deal, that was appropriate for him. He felt worth his time to fly to Boston. So it was just not a good experience. And listening to Michaela Maroney's testimony was just gut-wrenching to hear her experience as well. It's devastating.
Yeah, well, Aly, I mean, it is so clear that all of you were failed over and over again, and it's despicable to think about the young women, the girls who were abused after that first report came from Maggie, and they were waiting for the FBI to do something. Aly, you and your fellow gymnasts were so courageous. Thank you for speaking out. Thank you for using your voice. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Aly.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
And now we move to that.